what it does when you hear it.
Okay.
As a dancer.
Oh.
What type of movements would you want to do? What do you see possibly happening in the spirit?
For me, that sounds like for me, I want to rally the troops up.
Yes.
So I can see myself doing stuff like, come on, y'all.
Okay. So for okay, let's use that movie. We've all seen it. Black Panther. We've all seen it, right? Yeah. I better have seen it. I've seen it 3 times. So. And this is part of, African culture. This is part of a lot of different cultures. There's music involved with communication. There's music involved with ceremony. Okay, in Africa, there were when some of the slaves were brought to the U.S., a lot of their instruments, their drums, were banned because they could communicate through their drumming. So when they called them talking drums. So depending on what village that you stayed in, your drum sounded different depending on your dialect. So if there's a village that talked with a lot of like real quick little things, their drums may sound that's how they communicate. If there was a village that maybe had kind of a low, kind of drone, kind of slow talking, that's how they communicated, then their drums may sound like. Something simple. And I don't know what I just said through that, but it could be communicated in whatever. So, even more so, we talk about spiritual warfare. What are we communicating through our instrument, through our bodies, through our weapons? What are we communicating? What is being said in the spirit? What's being declared? I'm not verbally saying anything, but I'm saying something. I'm communicating something. So, bass drum, heartbeat of God, the accent, the wavelength, the tempo. Usually the bass drum is the thing that's driving the tempo. Talk about tempo, the speed of whatever that we're going on. Okay. So, see, the snare drum represents the hand clap of God.
Come on.
Okay. So, the clap, thrust, clap gives a blow, a blast, in whatever that we're doing. So, I'm not necessarily talking about if we're just playing a song in service. Okay, that's cool. Unless you really get into it, okay, God, use everything that I'm playing. But when we're really talking about prophetic and some warfare type thing going on in the atmosphere, that's what that represents. The toms represent the plow. It's the plow of God. It's plowing. It's turning the earth, turning things over. So, like in this region, it's really hard to just plant things. I'm talking about here in Muncie. It's really hard to plant things in the spirit, get things started, and have them be prosperous. Because it's a lot of things that are hovering over. It's a lot of the ground is not. You think about a farmer; they have to till the ground first before they have to turn the earth over first to get rid of that, whatever. All the inconsistencies and everything, and make it the soil conducive so you can plant a seed and things will actually grow. So the tom. So kind of have an example a little bit. See here. 1 second. All right.
of the ground. Hit us out of the ground and Monday.
An example of that putting into play would be so that's so it sounds very tribal. It doesn't have to be to that tempo. It doesn't even have to be to that beat per measure. That was kind of a 6/8 feels 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So, but that represents a plowing, and when you understand that in the spirit, you know that you're turning some earth. You know that you're turning some stuff over. You know when you hit that. So
that's so good.
that's the tom. So bass drum, heartbeat of God. Snare drum is a hand clap. The toms is a plow. The cymbals represent an atmosphere shifter.
Come on.
The shifting of God. So if I were to teach you how to play the drums, if you want to know where to put the cymbal at, like even in music. So physically, the way that things are set up now, how we do music, I'm going to teach you how to hit the cymbal on the 1. So there's 4 beats in the measure. We're going 4/4 time. If we any of us know anything on music, on sheet music or whatever, we're going 4/4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna teach you to hit the cymbal on the 1. That's the easiest place to put it. It always goes on the 1. On the 1 represents the beginning of a new measure, of a new place, a shift, elevation, a moving forward, a going to a new dimension, a going to another place. That represents a shift. So if you ever notice why when you hear the cymbals, it's called a crescendo, but when you hear the cymbals go shh, what does that make you want to do? It feels like you start doing some kind of different motion.
Yes, come on.
Just like that.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? And we do it because, that's what we're supposed to do here, because that's what we've always done. But if you understand what you're doing in spirit, then that's my interpretation of what David really said about playing skillfully. Because yes, I know to go to the cymbals because it sounds good and that that's what goes. But what you're actually doing is you are creating a shift. It's the atmosphere shifter. You're changing the atmosphere. You're going to a different place. That's why the Bible talks about praise God, praising with the high sounding cymbals. They weren't just like crash. They were probably crescendo. I mean, they had some drums in there, do. They had some shh. They were praising God. So praise represents a shift in the atmosphere as well, because no matter where you are, God dwells in the place. If God dwells in the praises of His people, God will be made manifest wherever you are. So if we start praising God, God is made manifest in that moment. So the atmosphere, nothing can stay the same when God shows up. So the atmosphere ultimately changes. So the cymbals, praise, all of that represents atmosphere changing. Okay. The organ. On the keyboard, you can play organ sounds. The actual first organs were pipe organs. So that represents the breath of God, because it took air to produce sound through the pipes. They had different level, different size pipes. So when air traveled through them, it made different tones based upon the length of the pipes that they were. So the organ represents the breath of God, or us being filled with the presence of God. When we cry out, our organs, our whole entire being represents the breath of God, represents the decree of God. So I got string instruments. String instruments are the articulate dimension revealer. And so because we have individual strings that you can pluck, you can pull, it's not a wind instrument, it's more so a percussive instrument. Like the piano is a percussive instrument because it has a little, if you ever open up a piano, it has a little beater that strikes the string, which causes vibration, which causes the molecules to bounce together, which causes sound in different tones. So that's an articulate dimension revealer. So when you're playing a string instrument, you're actually, just like they were, you saw how they strummed, the different ways that they strummed created a different weapon. So that's the ability that we have in the spirit once we understand that. And then you can even go in deeper and be like, God, show me what chords do what. Show me in this moment, actually, what am I doing? You know. So every time I strum, it's doing something different. Maybe it's creating the same weapon that keeps going on. Maybe God wants this to happen. So through you, he's playing, there's a battering ram. Or maybe through you, he's playing a spear that keeps striking the same area. Maybe he's sending out a sword that keeps cutting at the same place until he chops down the tree, chops down the high place.
Come on
those things
here.
that were exalted against God. Next, I have horns. Horns represent, we talk about, you hear about it in the Bible, when the trumpet sounds, when this happens, you hear a trumpet. You think when a king walks in, you hear, you hear the trumpet sound. So that is the declaration of God. When you blow on the horns, even the shofar, it's not a trumpet, but it's still a horn that is used to declare war, that is used to move the troops, that is used to rally. We see on Black Panther, old dude, he told him not to blow that horn. He ran up on that rock and and his rhinos came. And so it's the same type of thing. It's a way to rally troops. If you don't have a physical horn, you can still, like I said before, we have organs and we can produce sound that we can produce a sound that heaven can't, because of how we were made and who we are. We're not angels. We have a choice. We can do kind of whatever. The angels have been, celestial beings. They've just been praising God all the time. But we have a choice. We've been redeemed. So when our praise goes up, it hits different dimensions, it hits different levels, and it creates a sound that even makes the angels, want to. That's why Lucifer is trying to, it keeps on, he's been polluting and trying to continue to pollute, because he wants the praise not to go to God. He wants to praise, even if it doesn't go to him, that's cool with him. He just doesn't want the praise to go somewhere. He wants to turn, pollute, to alter, to pervert just means to turn. Pervert just means to twist. So we have something of God, and the enemy is trying to twist it and turn it, so we go this way. And so that's why we have to, make sure that we're standing on guard as gatekeepers in everything that we do, in every expression through our mouth, and every expression through our body, and everything that we're doing. We have to be conscious of where we are, the atmosphere, if it needs to be changed, if it needs to be maintained, if it needs to be shifted, any of those things. And so once you have some of this understanding about what you are doing, that is what, and like I said, that's what I believe that David was really expressing about playing skillfully. Not just knowing all my skills, because I'm still learning those. But if God is moving and he is downloading some sounds in my head that I've never heard before, and my fingers are just moving in the way that they never moved before, I know that God is creating through me, creating an atmosphere that needs to be created so that he can have his way. And that's playing skillfully, being able to hear what heaven sounds like. What are they doing in heaven right now? What type, even in dancing, what type of movements do I need to recreate? Ezekiel talked about how the cherubim, how these angels were moving when the sky opened up. These 4 angels that had the faces we know about that had the wings that covered their face, the wings that were flying, the wings that all this stuff. The movements, what movements need to be reproduced on earth that are happening in heaven? What sounds need to be reproduced on earth that's happening in heaven to reproduce the attributes, to reproduce the atmosphere, to reproduce the healing, to reproduce the will of God on earth?